The uprising ultimately ended in failure. The people were brutally massacred, and the holy city of Jerusalem was reduced to ruins. From that moment on, Jewish history formally entered the age of the Great Diaspora. In Hebrew, the dispersion of the Jewish people is called galut, meaning exile, being forced to live far from one's homeland. There were two main forms of Jewish dispersion: voluntary migration and forced exile. 1. Voluntary migration. Jewish communities across the ancient world. Voluntary migration began centuries before the destruction of Jerusalem. As early as the time of David and Solomon, Jews had already traveled abroad for trade and long-term settlement. After the northern and southern kingdoms fell, even more Jews moved to foreign lands: Syria, Egypt, Babylon, Greece, and many regions in Europe. Across the vast Roman Empire, Jewish communities could be found almost everywhere. Despite living far apart, they continued to view Jerusalem as their spiritual center, their nation, and their eternal capital. Jews from all regions regularly traveled there for pilgrimage, paid religious taxes, and accepted Jerusalem's authority in matters of religious law. The Jewish community of Babylon, for example, survived from ancient times onward. In the early Roman period, Palestine and Babylon became the twin centers of Jewish scholarship and culture. When the Palestinian center declined, Babylon grew even stronger, surpassing the homeland in influence. In Babylon, the Jews were led by hereditary leaders who represented the community before the ruling Persian monarch. Although they answered to the king, they enjoyed broad autonomy, functioning almost like independent Jewish princes. This structure lasted until the 10th century. Babylonian Jews also established renowned academies, such as those in Sura and Nehardea, which elevated Jewish scholarship to new heights. Their most distinguished scholars, called Jainim, compiled the Babylonian Talmud, which later became the authoritative legal and religious text for Jews around the world. 2. Forced exile. A nation on the move under imperial domination. The destruction of Jerusalem and its temple marked a turning point in Jewish forced dispersion. The temple had always been the center of Jewish religious life, where prayers, sacrifices, and thrice-yearly pilgrimages took place. Jerusalem was also the political and economic heart of Jewish society, even after the kingdom had fallen. But once the temple was destroyed and the nature of the city changed, its unifying power gradually faded. Forced dispersion included the Assyrian deportation of the Israelites, the Babylonian captivity in the 6th century BCE, the Roman Empire's brutal suppression, enslavement, and expulsion of Jews after the revolt's Roman persecution drove large numbers of Jews away from Palestine. Some were taken to Rome as slaves, but many more fled as refugees. Their migration routes spanned the known world: eastward, Babylon, Persia, Central Asia, India, even China; westward, Egypt, North Africa, Southern Europe; northward, Asia Minor, the Caucasus; southward, the Arabian Peninsula. With the expansion of the Roman Empire, countless Jews settled across Western and Central Europe. They contributed significantly to local economies and cultures, but religious differences often prevented full integration. As feudalism took hold in Western Europe, Jews repeatedly faced persecution and expulsion by monarchs. Central and Eastern Europe, with abundant land and sparse populations, became new refuges. By the late Middle Ages, nearly half of the world's Jews lived in Poland, Lithuania, Hungary, and Russia. Both voluntary and involuntary migrations together formed the Jewish Great Diaspora. From then on, the Jewish people became a nation without land, without a country, drifting across the world. 3. A spirit that never scattered. The invisible temple and the eternal longing for home. Jewish communities reached nearly every corner of the globe. Yet what is astonishing is that they remained spiritually united. Across centuries of hardship, they endured, unbroken and undiminished. With remarkable adaptability, Jews often established themselves quickly in new lands, building businesses and achieving excellence. In Spain, Western Europe, Central Europe, and North Africa, Jewish communities often became the most prosperous and culturally advanced groups, contributing profoundly to local society. Even though they left their homeland, they never abandoned their longing for Jerusalem. The physical temple may have been destroyed, but in their hearts, an invisible temple endured. The further their dispersion extended, and the harsher the persecution became, the stronger their yearning for their ancestral land grew. This longing became a defining aspect of Jewish religion, culture, and collective psychology, eventually developing into the idea of returning to the homeland. Jews believed they were God's chosen people, entrusted with spreading His will. God promised Abraham in Genesis 17 that Canaan would be their everlasting homeland. Thus, no matter how far they wandered, they believed they would one day return to the promised land. Many interpreted their exile as a divine test and punishment, suffering endured as a form of atonement, a temporary hardship preceding eventual redemption. This belief deeply shaped everyday Jewish life. They prayed 3 times a day, always facing Jerusalem. The final line of the Passover Seder is, "Next year in Jerusalem, those unable to be buried in the Holy Land would place a small pouch of Jerusalem soil in their graves at weddings. A glass is shattered to remember the destroyed temple. New houses intentionally leave an unfinished corner to symbolize the yet unrestored Jerusalem." It is this enduring faith that kept the Jewish people united through 1,000 years of wandering, uplifting their moral life and preserving their identity. And it is this faith that sustained their eternal hope for the day when they would return to their homeland and rebuild their nation.